Hello there, you're watching the nightly news program live on all 24 news channels from Algiers. Next are today's top stories. At the invitation of Russian President, the Algerian President arrives in Russia as part of a three-day state visit to strengthen bilateral relations. Also coming up, new round of violent clashes between the Sudanese army and the rapid support forces flare in the capital Khartoum on Tuesday, with heavy weapons and an intense fight of warplanes. Also ahead, one Palestinian was killed and 8 others were wounded by the occupation bullets in Nablus, and Mahmoud Abbas arrives in China for a 3-day state visit. And Russia seizes German Leopard tanks and American Bradley armored vehicles in Ukraine, and Putin confirms that Kiev's losses in the counterattack are close to a catastrophe. Those were today's top stories. Welcome to the details. First off in our news, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, arrived in Moscow on Tuesday in a 3-day state visit to Russia at the invitation of his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. The visit is part of the strengthening of cooperation between the two friendly countries. President Tebboune will participate during the visit in the proceedings of the International Economic Forum to be held in the city of St. Petersburg. The bilateral relations between Algeria and Russia over the past 6 decades have been characterized by continuous cooperation, mutual trust, and strategic partnership, which will be further strengthened by the state visit of Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, a visit that aims to give a stronger push to the strategic partnership agreement signed between the two countries in 2001, especially in the fields of economy, trade, and scientific cooperation. To other Algeria-related news, participants in a workshop of experts and specialists on the development of renewable hydrogen held Tuesday in Algiers under the co-chairmanship of the Ministry of Energy and Mines and the European Union, noted the strong potential and assets Algeria is endowed with to become a major regional player in this sector. Mohamed Khater reports.
During the workshop, Algeria affirmed its aim to become an important player in the production and marketing of hydrogen on account of its geographical position, its proximity to European markets, its transport networks and infrastructure, which constitute relevant comparative advantages. In this context, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Energy and Mines, Abdelkarim Awisi, underlined that Algeria has several assets which allow it to become a major regional player in the development of hydrogen, especially green hydrogen.
Actually, this is a technical workshop bringing together experts to examine all aspects and axes relating to the hydrogen production industry, including the institutional and legal framework that should be put in place. As far as we're concerned, we have contributed in this framework since Algeria has a large experience in the oil and gas industry, and this new branch of hydrogen could bring new opportunities for national economy.
For his part, the main advisor to the Director General for Energy in the European Commission, Tudor Constantinescu, indicated that the workshop will pave the way for more cooperation between Algeria and the EU in the energy field.
After today's meeting, we will see the concrete projects, and we will see how we could develop certain projects in the field of hydrogen. The EU has financing mechanism, and a bank has been created to finance hydrogen-related projects. It's a production pillar within the European Union, but there are also bank subsidiaries abroad to provide financial support for hydrogen revenues.
Meanwhile, the Director for Industrial Development Policy at Hydrogen Europe, Maria Asunción Rojo Torrent, underlined the old and historic relations binding Algeria with the European Union in the field of energy.
Algeria is very well positioned in terms of available potential for renewable energy sources, in terms of vicinity, so geographically speaking, the location could not be better. And there is already a long-standing relationship on energy topics that are also dealing with renewable energy sources, energy efficiency, and so on.
It's worth noting that several Algerian and European experts and specialists, as well as companies managers and public bodies concerned with the development of green hydrogen, took part in the workshop.
The World Bank has raised its growth forecast for the Algerian economy during next year, predicting that it will achieve a 2.4% growth. The international financial body indicated in its latest report on global economic prospects that Algeria is poised to record a 1.7% growth by the end of this year. The Speaker of the Libyan House of Representatives, Aguila Saleh, said that the House of Representatives has amended the constitutional declaration to include the formation of a committee of 6 from the House of Representatives and 6 from the State Council to draft it or submit a proposal, for the presidential and parliamentary elections law. The House of Representatives warned that the draft presidential election law might cause unrest in the country after the Speaker of the House, Aguila Saleh, expressed his reservations about the agreement.
Libya is in exceptional circumstances. We don't want to marginalize or expel anyone. We want the ballot box to be the arbiter among the Libyans and to know their opinion through the ballot boxes. What reached us is draft consisting of 89 articles. This draft is under study by the members of 6+6 committee, and what the members agreed upon officially reaches us until this moment.
Since Tunisia has been facing a critical economic crisis, the IMF has offered the North African country a loan of $1 billion, something that the President Qais Said rejected. Now, Italy and the United States leaders are actually stressing that it is important that Tunisia accepts the offer in order to get out of its crisis. More details with Salma Nassim.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called on Tunisia to agree to international monetary fund reforms to avoid falling off in economic crisis after the European Union agreed to offer Tunisia a €1 billion aid package. As without a loan, Tunisia faces a full-blown balance of payment crisis, and credit rating agencies have said Tunisia may default. Blinken, meeting his Italian counterpart, Antonio Tajani, welcomed the important step taken by the European Union.
We very much would welcome the Tunisian government presenting a revised reform plan to the IMF, and for the IMF to be able to act on the plan presented. But these are sovereign decisions. This is a sovereign decision for Tunisia. It's not a decision for us or anyone else to make. But it's clear that Tunisia needs additional assistance if it is going to avoid falling off the proverbial economic cliff.
Tunisia's bailout talks about the International Monetary Fund have been delayed for months, and there is little sign President Qais Said is willing to agree to the steps needed to reach a deal and help the country avoid a financial crisis. And according to Antony Blinken, this will help Tunisia get a sustainable and positive path.
What the EU and Italy have done, I think, is an important step, but something more comprehensive that, in our judgment, the IMF can best provide would be important to actually helping Tunisia get on a sustainable and positive path. But the decisions that are involved really are decisions for Tunisia to make. But we would very much support finding some way forward, because it's important for Tunisia, but it's also, I think, important for the region. It's important for Europe.
It's worth noting that the Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani voiced support for the International Monetary Fund package and the U.S. position, but said that Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's government wanted also to offer financial assistance to support those reforms, arguing that Tunisia's and Libya's stability is very important for the stability of the Mediterranean region.
The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, called to reconfigure the United Nations multidimensional integrated stabilization mission in Mali. Guterres, in his report on the general situation in Mali, asked the Security Council to vote in favor of extending the MINUSMA mission for a year, during a session scheduled for June 29th. He also proposed rationalizing MINUSMA's missions around a limited set of priorities in order to improve its overall performance until the end of the political transition process scheduled for next March.
As I stressed in January, the status quo is not and cannot be an option. It can also neither be an option for the Malian people who continue to bear the burden of unspeakable violence and whose strong yearning for a better future remains unfulfilled, nor one for the international community since 2013. Therefore, the Security Council has recommended an extension of the mission for a year while maintaining the number of personnel at the current level. I intend to use my authority to reconfigure the mission and deploy civilian and military elements where they are most needed.
Nearly 3,800 people died on migration routes within and from the Middle East and North Africa last year, the highest number recorded there since 2017. According to data published on Tuesday by the International Organization for Migration, the United Nations Migration Agency's Missing Migrants Project recorded 3,789 deaths in 2022 along sea and land routes in the region, including crossings of the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea. Clashes intensified in many regions of Sudan as the war continues between the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese army. Many have reported the use of heavy weaponry and airstrikes. The IGAD summit, for its part, insisted on the Sudanese parties to find a pacific solution for the conflict and urged them to stop the violence and hostilities. Usama Ayadi with the report.
Clashes and gunfire worsened day after day in greater capital area of Sudan. Several blocks in the southern part of Khartoum have been shelled for 2 consecutive days, causing the death of at least 18 civilians and the injury of many others. Warring sides have accused each other of launching attacks right after the ceasefire ended. Sudan has witnessed deadly armed clashes between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces in the capital city of Khartoum and other areas since April 15.
The supply line of food was cut off due to the conflict, so the supplies could not be transported to stores for residents to purchase. People are living a difficult life as they are faced with shortage of water, power and gas, which means they are forced to cook with coal and firewood. In short, almost all public services no longer exist now.
The humanitarian situation is further deteriorating and people face daily challenges to have access to food and other means of life, while health system and sanitary situation remain on the brink of collapse and necessitate urgent international action. At the international scene, and speaking of the opening ceremony of the 14th Ordinary Assembly of the IGAD Heads of State and Government held in Djibouti, the Executive Secretary of IGAD, Working Gabehu, has called on Sudanese warring parties to cease all hostilities and give real dialogue a chance.
However, Your Excellencies, the gains we banked from this agreement are now being eroded by the ongoing conflict in the Republic of Sudan, which has resulted in immense suffering, with hundreds of brothers and sisters losing their lives, thousands injured and over 1.4 million displaced since the fighting broke out almost 2 months ago on 15th of April 2023.
Today's summit has brought together leaders and officials of various countries, including Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, to discuss regional issues, including the Sudan's conflict, which was on the top of the agenda, noting that the war in Sudan has already affected the whole region.
A Palestinian was killed and 8 others were injured on Tuesday during Zionist raid into Balata refugee camp in Nablus in the West Bank. According to Health Ministry, the 19-year-old Faris Abdul Munim Hashash was pronounced dead after being severely injured by Zionist bullets. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas arrived in China on Tuesday at the invitation of his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, which will last for 3 days. The president is also set to meet with a number of senior Chinese officials. According to the president of the Palestinian Chinese Friendship Society, Mahmoud Abbas' visits to China will contribute to promoting further development and strengthening of Palestine and China ties.
أنا متأكد
I believe Palestine-China relations will continue to develop in depth, and the friendship between President Xi and President Abbas will continue to deepen. China is trying to resolve the Palestinian issue by peaceful and just means. We benefit from the Belt and Road Initiative, a great initiative put forward by China. It is based on mutual respect and mutual benefit.
Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang said that his country will share what he called Chinese wisdom in supporting peace talks to resolve the Palestinian issue, which he described fair. Chen, during talks with his Palestinian counterpart Riyad al-Maliki in Beijing, stressed that his country always supports the cause of the Palestinian people to restore their legitimate national rights, stressing that China attaches great importance to it. To other development now, the Central Command of the U.S. Army announced that a helicopter had an accident in northeastern Syria last Sunday, injuring 22 soldiers of varying degrees, without giving any details about the cause of the accident or the severity of the injuries. In addition, in a statement by the U.S. Central Command, it was confirmed that 10 military personnel had been evacuated to advanced care facilities outside the region. To Russia-Ukraine file now, NATO Secretary General said on Thursday that Ukraine is making new gains in its war with Russia and that Western weapons supply is helping Ukrainians to make advancements. However, Russian President said that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is only causing huge losses to Kiev. Let's follow the report signed by Sofian Keturi.
Ukraine's counteroffensive is making headlines in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. For the Ukrainian part, Kiev's defense ministry said on Monday that its forces were successful in retaking 7 villages and made further advances in the southeast. Just a day after, NATO Secretary General confirmed these advancements and said that the West's supply is indeed helping the Ukrainian soldiers in the way to triumph.
And the support NATO allies and partners are delivering to Ukraine is making difference on the battlefield as we speak, because the Ukrainians have launched the offensive, they are making advances, they are gaining ground. This is still early days, but what we all know is that the more land the Ukrainians are able to liberate, the stronger their hand will be at the negotiating table, and the more likely it is that President Putin will understand that he will never win this battle, he will never win the war of aggression.
However, Russia has something else to say. In fact, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday that Ukraine lost 25 to 30% of military vehicles, and Kiev's human losses were 10 times higher than Russia's. He also targeted the West by emphasizing that Moscow was open to peace talks over Ukraine, but that the only way to do so is for Western countries to end their arms supplies to Kiev.
They lost over 160 tanks and over 360 armored vehicles of various types during this time. The structure of their losses does not look good for them. What am I speaking about? Out of personnel losses, which are approaching the mark that could be called catastrophic. The structure of those losses is not good.
President Putin also believed Ukraine was responsible for a breach last week of the Kakhovka Dam, which he said had been caused by Kiev shelling the structure with US-made HIMARS missile systems.
They use HIMARS rockets deliberately and many times to hit Kakhovka Dam. That's the point. Maybe they had some kind of plant there. I don't know. Maybe they added something insignificant once more, and destruction began.
The conflict took another path away from peace negotiating table. As a response on whether Russia is planning to launch an offensive after Kiev launches counteroffensive, President Putin said Moscow's new action in Ukraine is depending on the Russian military potential.
In the same context, the International Atomic Energy Agency's Director General said on Tuesday in Kiev, just before leaving on a trip to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, that he was very concerned about the nuclear power plant potentially getting caught in combat. Grossi said he had met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to discuss the situation affecting the plant, which grew more serious after the Kakhovka Dam burst last week. Iran's nuclear negotiator announced on Tuesday that he had met with diplomats from 3 European countries in Abu Dhabi to discuss a number of issues, including the country's atomic energy program. Bagheri was also in Abu Dhabi to discuss with the officials the promotion of bilateral cooperation and review regional issues. For its part, U.S. State Department announced that the existence of an interim nuclear deal with Iran was completely false.
I will say a few things about that. Number one, we have always had the ability to deliver messages to Iran when it's in the interest of the United States to do so. Number two, as we have made clear since the beginning of this administration, the President is committed to ensuring that Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon, and we believe that diplomacy is the best means to accomplish that, though we have also been clear that we have taken no option off the table. And then something I specifically wanted to comment on, because I've seen this reported, that there is an interim deal of some sort. That is completely false. But I will just say that there are a number of reports we have seen by various outlets about different deals or purported deals or diplomatic negotiations. The vast majority of those reports have been either wrong or completely misleading, and that includes reports of an interim deal.
During a visit to Caracas, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi stated on Monday that Iran and Venezuela want to increase bilateral trade to $20 billion, up from $3 billion. The two countries signed a memorandum of understanding to expand their cooperation in petrochemicals with a view to carrying out joint projects. Another deal to increase cooperation in mining was also signed, but no details were provided regarding both agreements. Maduro, for his part, hailed Raisi's visit and announced that further details and investments were on the horizon. The Venezuelan president also conferred a state honor on Raisi. The Caracas visit is the first stop on a Latin American tour by Raisi, who will also travel to Cuba and Nicaragua.
The level of economic cooperation was at the level of $600 million 2 years ago. But today this has increased trade and economic cooperation to more than $3 billion. The goal we have for commercial and economic cooperation, the first step is to take the level of cooperation to $10 billion, and the next step, we want to take it to $20 billion. We have signed 25 agreements during this historic visit of President Raisi, and during these hours we are still negotiating new agreements for new investments. We have to make the most of these hours of this historic visit to conclude negotiations for new projects, new agreements, new investments in all areas of oil, petrochemicals, refining, gas, mining, gold, iron, bauxite. Of the connection, we are signing an agreement to establish a joint shipping company, Iran-Venezuela, that allows us to raise trade to the levels that President Raisi is pointing out, to take it from $3.3 billion on this stage to $10 billion and then to $20 billion.
British police announced on Tuesday that a 31-year-old man had been arrested on suspicion of a murder after 3 people were found dead on the street in the central English city of Nottingham. Nottinghamshire, police identified the Ilkeston Road, where police were called just after 4 a.m., where 2 people were found dead in the street. Milton Street, where a van attempted to run over 3 people. They are currently being treated in hospital. And Migdala Road, where a man has been found dead, as the main locations of focus of their investigations at the moment.
Today, there has been a shocking and tragic series of events which has led to the lives of 3 innocent people being taken and left another member of the public in a critical condition in hospital. I can tell you that a 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in police custody.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry accused the United States of being hysterical in dealing with the concept of national security with the aim of maintaining its technological and military dominance. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin confirmed that Washington is working to popularize the concept of national security to suppress Chinese companies and deliberately destroy the international economic and trade system.
In order to maintain its hegemony in military science and technology, the United States has repeatedly popularized the concept of national security, abused state power, suppressed Chinese enterprises, deliberately destroyed the international economic and trade order and global trade rules, and endangered the stability of global industrial chains and supply chains. We have come already to a point of hysteria.
The end of our program. For more, visit our social media platforms and our website. Thank you for watching. Till next time, take care.